What's up guys, and welcome back to Milliken Fishing. You know, a couple weeks ago I made a video about how to make your own bass fishing jig, and it's been very popular. It's probably going to be one of my most watched, if not my most watched video here in the next couple months, and I thank you guys a ton for that. It's all because of you. So in that video I told you about the whole process I used from taking the jig hook and the lead ingot, turning that into a molded jig head, powder coating, adding a weed guard, adding a skirt, and finally getting a finished product for a silicone bass fishing jig that I use, and how I like to use it, what colors I like, pretty much everything I like about these jigs that I make on my own, and how they're effective for you and how they can save you a ton of money on the water. If you want to watch that video before you start on this one, go ahead and check the link down in my description, and that will show you how to take you to this finished silicone jig. But tonight we're going to be talking about a whole different animal, and that is the living rubber jig. You know, living rubber is caught on and become really popular over the last handful of years. Although it's been popular for decades, but among fishermen, you know, they catch a ton of fish, and really living rubber has an advantage over silicone in that it has a lot more action in the water. You can add a really big long living rubber skirt like this one, and that will give you a giant profile in the water. A lot of guys use this, a lot of guys refer to it as a mop jig, or you can use a smaller finesse style skirt, and once again it has more action. It's a lot more natural presentation than a regular silicone jig, and people obviously love that, and so do the bass. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the two different types of living rubber jigs I like to make, and give you guys a list of everything that you're going to need to make your own living rubber jigs. It's not difficult, just like the silicone, and it's going to be a great way for you to save money and catch more fish. Alright, so here's what you're going to need to make your own living rubber jigs. Obviously, you're going to need to get some living rubber. This comes from livingrubber.com. It's the best website. It's got the best variety if you want to get a bunch of different rubber. I also use silicone tabs. You know, I'm not going to go through the whole process of how I pour a jig head, how I paint a jig head and drill it out and powder coat it and all that. Again, check the link in the description down below if you want to go through that whole process. But we're going to start with these finished, painted, cured jig heads that have already been drilled out, ready to go. Again, you're going to need brush guards. I like a little bit of fly head cement. We'll get to that a little bit later. A nice sharp pair of scissors. The old gel super glue. Thread and bobbin. This is very cheap. This is just regular thread. A fly tying vise. It helps tremendously. I mean, you can rig something up together to hold your hook, but nothing works better. This is like one of the cheaper vices you can get on the market. And then I like a big clamp. We'll go show you that in a little bit as well. One that you can drill down onto a workbench or anything like that. So let's start making these guys. All right, so we're gonna start with the first type of living rubber jig I like to make, and that's a giant mop football jig. You could do it with any type of head, but to me it works best drug around any type of structure, rock piles, stuff like that. It's awesome when the fish want a bigger profile, or if you're trying to weed out some bigger fish among a bunch of small ones. So we're going to take this jig head, hook it into our vise just like that, and we're going to start with some wraps just to get it going and get a nice base with our thread here. And like I've said before, it does not need to be perfect. We're just going to clip. I'm going to take a nice sharp pair of scissors and clip off the excess. And we're going to start with the living rubber. So you want a real long section of living rubber, and you're always going to want to start with more than you're going to need at the end. And I'll show you why, because we're going to have to trim off a bunch of that to get it to chop right. So we're going to start, I like to put it just a little bit past the bottom of the hook. I always start with my living rubber on the outside, or on, excuse me, I always start with my living rubber on the inside. So we're going to match it up like that, and we're just going to wrap it around with that thread and the bobbin. Like I said, nothing special about this thread. Really a great benefit with this thread is that when you wrap it around up here, it's a really tight hold up against the jig head, so it has a really nice flare to it. Alright, once you got 8 or 10 wraps, we are good to add a little bit of highlight colors, and I like to do this with regular silicone skirt tabs just like we did before. We're going to take a little bit of watermelon to add to this brown, and we will add a little bit of orange as well, a little bit of accent color like I talked about in the first video. Nothing crazy here. So just like the living rubber, we're going to add the silicone here, And you need to make sure, be a little bit more careful with the silicone placement. I like to have the tabs in just below the bottom of the hook because you don't have a giant 10-inch or so piece of rubber there. So I hold it on there for a second. And the great thing too about tying it yourself is that you can get these colors exactly where you want them in your skirt. You know, you don't have them all mixed together. You can put the green right on the back if you want on the back, or any of the highlight colors, accent colors, anywhere you want them. So after 4 or 5 wraps, it's good on that. We're just going to add our little 4-strand orange accent. Same deal, we're going to want him on the back, or else at least I do. It doesn't really make that big a difference. Like I said, bass don't really care that much. And boom, 4 or 5 wraps, we're good to go. All right, now let's watch this closely. This is how you're going to tie it to finish it off. And a lot of guys, you can get a triangle to do this, and there's videos out there to watch for that. But here's what you do. All right, so you grab it like this, and you turn it. And I like to turn it 2 times. And then you're going to take it, you're going to go over all the skirt material on top, pull it all through. And then you're going to let that cinch itself down tight. So let's do that again. This took me a little bit to figure out. 2 times. Over the jig material, let it cinch down. And honestly, you can do this 20 times if you want. 3 or 4 times has always been good for me. I haven't had one of these fail yet. So let's do 4 times just for good measure so you guys can see how I like to tie these. So there's 3. Once again, grab it right there and just spin it a few times. And that will tie itself down. Very, very simple little knot. Not difficult. Alright, so once we're done there, we'll take our little sharp scissors, trim that down as close as we can. So we're done with that. And that's when this head cement's going to come in. So we're going to take a really cheap little paintbrush, and we're not going to want very much of this at all. So I'm just going to touch it to where that knot is. And that's it. That'll hold it. Honestly, I don't even know if you need this stuff. I put it on there because it makes me feel better. This is just your basic, super cheap fly head cement. I'll put a link down to everything you need in the description as well. But we're done with the tie-ins part. So we're going to go over here to the clamp. And I'll show you why we want the clamp. So I'm going to clip all these silicone strands just like we do with the regular silicone jig, right where they break into their own strands. Once we have those 4 cut, we're ready to do the rubber. So here's what we're going to do with the rubber. Rubber has to be stretched, and it really helps if you have 2 people. You can just have one person grab onto the end of that. Obviously, I'm by myself right now, and so we are going to clamp that down tight. So to separate the strands on living rubber, you're going to pull up to stretch it and grab onto the jig head. If you don't grab onto the jig head, it'll stop pulling apart wherever you're holding onto it, and we're just going to cut it. And they'll, 1 strand at a time, they will go up there like that. The more you stretch it, the easier it is for them to come out by themselves. So I kind of stretch more and more as they start getting closer to the end. Boom, so look how long that guy is. We're going to trim him down for sure. But for now, looks pretty good. So same deal, we're going to take this guy out. We're going to clamp in the bottom part of the living rubber really tightly. Going to stretch him out. Boom, he's done. Alright, so I like them really big and long, but this is a little bit excessive. So we're going to cut this off a little bit down here. These ones that are still together, if you kind of stretch them out and pull on them a little bit, they'll be nice and broken apart. And we have a nice big jig there. So now all we got to do, just like we did in the first video, is add the weed guard. And after a few seconds, that will be good to go. So let's add one of these beautiful pack of craws we just got to him, and then we are going to test him and see what he looks like in the tank. There it is. That's the finished product. Looks a little bit messy because it is. And check this guy out in the tank. Tell me that dude's not going to get bit, or at least draw a ton of attention from fish in the area. And that's what it is. It's not just a big fish deal, although I do generally catch a better average size fish on it, but it's just that big bait draw, just like a big swim bait. You just flat out can get more bites on a giant profile like that sometimes. Alright, so I'm going to show you the other type of living rubber jig I like to make now, which is a little finesse type jig. So we're going to start off with the same deal. We're going to clamp him in. It's just a little tiny round head jig. I guess it's not that small, but we're going to do the same way to start it. We'll get a couple good wraps in, get a nice foundation before we start putting the rubber on there and the silicone. And we're going to use much less of the rubber this time. We're going to use a solid amount, but definitely not as much as we used before. It's always better to have too much rather than not enough with this rubber, since you do have to cut it off and you lose some of that excess. So we're going to wrap it just like we did with the big mop style jig, 5 or 6 wraps. Make it really nice and tight up against the head of the jig, that way it flares real nice. We're going to grab our silicone skirt, put him on there just about the same way. We'll make some adjustments in a second. Four or 5 wraps of that guy. And we're going to add some accent colors. We're going to add an accent color, just a 4 strands of orange once again. Get him on there. 4, 5, 6 turns on him. Same way with tying this. So again, grab it, 2 twists. You can do 5 twists if you want, 3 twists, at least 2 though. Cinch him down. Again, a couple twists over the top. Pull it down. We'll do 4 total. So there's 3. And there's 4. Alright. Cut him down to the quick. Hit it with a little bit of that cement, which dries almost immediately, especially when you just put that little dab on there. So we're going to take this guy off, cut him down to a finesse skirt, similar to how I do my other finesse skirts. And we're going to cut this guy off just past the hook for the silicone and for the rubber. Alright, so once again, we're going to come over here for the rubber. Get it in there tight. Stretch this guy out to the top the same way. We have way too much on the top, so we can probably actually get another finesse skirt out of this, which is always good to be a little bit more resourceful. Bring him back over here, but there it is. That little dude right there. If you're familiar with professional bass fishing, this is almost identical to the jig Edwin Evers used to win the Bassmaster Classic in 2016 down on Grand Lake. Almost the exact same color. His had flatline living rubber. I don't know about flatline rubber. It's supposed to have a little bit more action, but this stuff is, the round rubber is way easier to work with. But just like he did, it's an awesome natural presentation when the water's cold and the water's really clear. That's just a little bit different, has a little bit more action than your silicone skirt in that super cold water. So you heard it here first. If you tie your own finesse jigs with living rubber like this, you will win the Bassmaster Classic. Anyways, thanks a ton for watching, guys. If you like this video, go ahead down, hit the MF down there to subscribe to my channel and see more. I know it's been a long time coming. This Sunday, I am going to be giving away free products. Since I went over 500 subscribers, I'm probably rolling well past that now, but I appreciate you guys watching so much. It really means a lot to me. I'm not just saying that and being cheesy. It wouldn't be around, this channel wouldn't be going if it wasn't for you guys watching and supporting. I'm going to give away some of these awesome jigs on my giveaway. Tune in Sunday. Coming right up, the 29th, I'll be doing a giveaway video and let you know the rules to enter the giveaway. And like I said, I've only got 500 so subscribers, so your chances to win are very good. Anyways, as always, thanks a ton for watching. Peace.